Any chance Kansas can pull off what would be, I would argue, the best win of the Lance Leipold era? We preview KU and Texas Tech.
You are Locked On Jayhawks, your daily podcast on the Kansas Jayhawks. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's going on? Derek Johnson here. This is Locked On Jayhawks. Thanks for making it your first listen every day. And thank you to the everydayers catching each and every episode of the show. We are free and available anywhere you get your podcast, including on our YouTube page where you can like and subscribe to the show. And on today's edition of LOJ, we are previewing Kansas against Texas Tech. We're going to get into some of the latest injury report news. We're going to get into the biggest storylines and headlines for this one, the Texas Tech scouting report, deep dive into their quarterbacks, matchups of the game, and plenty more on today's episode of LOJ. And it's all brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook. Right now, new customers can bet just $5. And if your bet wins, you'll get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. Download the app today with FanDuel. So Kansas takes on Texas Tech, a little Saturday night action in the Big 12. I think, I don't know if we're looking at like what's the biggest storyline of this one. To me, it's just kind of like you continue to try to figure out how good all of these teams are in college football. For Texas Tech, it's more of like, okay, it seems like they're the best team in the Big 12. Though if they lose this game, then it becomes more of a conversation again of is it wide open? But for Texas Tech, it's not just that. Is Texas Tech one of the best teams in the country, not just the Big 12? From the Kansas perspective, the conversation kind of to me circles around like, and honestly, we might not even have the answer at the end. Like the perfect result to still not understanding what Kansas is KU losing this game like relatively close, like losing by 7, losing by 10 points or something. Because if Kansas wins this game, we're going to walk away from it saying Kansas is a very good football team. Like if Kansas wins this game, they should be ranked. They'd be 5-2. Their 2 losses would be close game to Cincinnati, close game at Missouri, two other ranked teams. If Kansas loses this game and gets blown out, they're sitting at 4-3, and it's like, okay, 2 close losses, good team. You got blown out by Tech. Yeah, you're probably a 6 or 7 win team, kind of like what we've been thinking all the way along. But the flip side to this is if you're in that limbo zone where if you do lose by 7 or 10 points, we are going to walk away. You'll be able to have the arguments. You'll be able to say, no, I'm telling you, Kansas is a good team. I know they're 4-3, but they have all these close losses to good opponents. It's like, well, at some point you do have to start winning the games. And, the flip side to that will be like, okay, but, when are they going to win? Because if you're not going to win any of those games against good opponents, then it's not going to matter. So that's the biggest zone where it's like, I think we'll have a tough time figuring out how good is this team if they end up losing by 10 points or 14 points or something like that, where it's like they covered the spread, but, they still couldn't find a way to win. So, but we will learn, a little bit more, I think, about the defense, certainly. Was that second half for real against UCF? Because if you're able to replicate anything close to that in the Texas Tech game against a really good offense, we'll start to say that. Versus if Tech throws it all around you, just like the Missouri and Cincinnati games, it's going to be further proof that, like, yeah, if you're playing any quarterback with a pulse, you're kind of screwed on defense. So, but we're going to learn more about that specifically. Now, I think we're also going to this might sound crazy, but like legitimately, if KU goes into Lubbock and wins the game and Jalon Daniels has a big performance, he's going to start popping up in Heisman conversations. I saw The Athletic did like a Heisman straw poll, which they typically do like every week. And somebody gave Jalon Daniels like a second place vote. It was 1 vote. If they won this game, or heck, if it was like an overtime loss or something and Jalon just going off, he's going to start getting like at least some pub and recognition. Not saying he's going to be the front runner, but he'll at least be in there. So those to me are kind of the biggest storylines and headlines of this one. The news of this one, the injury news, I should say, a lot of guys on the out list for KU, which is not great. Joseph Sipp is out. Now, Sipp has not been someone like, he was somebody who was expecting big things before the season begun. And he just hasn't been able to. He's only played 2 games. I don't know if he still has a red shirt available. I wonder if that is still an option. Does that make sense? Because Bengali Kamara and Trey Lathan are graduating at the end of the year. At this point, you just say, okay, we're going to get you in 2 more games and try to keep you for next year. I don't remember what the situation is there. Devin Dye is out. Obviously, he had the injury against UCF. That's unfortunate because KU thin at the safety position. Now, they could potentially be a little less thin at the safety position because Laquan Robinson is listed as questionable and Mason Ellis is listed as questionable. Now, for all we know, both guys won't play, but the fact that Ellis was out last week, now he's questionable, that would be a huge pickup back if KU could get Mason Ellis back into the fold as kind of their third safety, like linebacker type. Ellis has had a good season so far. He's played 119 snaps, 71.7 PFF grade. He'd be a very useful and helpful player for a game like this for KU. Now, Dylan Brooks still out. Deshaun Hanukkah out. Obviously, that was announced. He's out for the year, so sucks there. Ezra Vidral is out. So one of your backup linebackers, David Abajian, Jason Strickland, Conley Hovey, Jaden Nickens, guys we continue to see on the out list who weren't going to be on the too deep. And then Saeed Gibbs is the other one. So Gibbs being out tests he's not a safety, he's a corner, but could test your safety and corner depth a little more because sometimes you're going to have a safety come into that slot role. Gibbs, 61.1 PFF grade, hasn't been, a great year for him. He's been targeted at times, but it hasn't been like a just downright bad year either. It's just been a fine ho-hum year. So other players are going to have to step up there. And we mentioned if Mason Ellis is out too, and you're down Devin Dye and Saeed Gibbs, both guys who are playing a lot for you, and you're down Mason Ellis, like that's a lot to have to lose in the secondary. And then Daniel Highshaw is doubtful. Now, obviously that makes me expect him not, playing in this game. I guess we'll see. That just means more for like LeSean Williams. But it actually is good news that he's on doubtful from the standpoint of last week. Again, he was just listed as out. And to go from out last week to doubtful this week at least makes you feel like he's progressing, right? It doesn't mean he's going to play this week, but then you think about it and you have the bye week after this, and then you have Kansas State. And it'll be the last opportunity for Highshaw to play Kansas State. And so that's kind of where I'm circling it and being like, okay, the trend in the right direction tells me that I'm kind of expecting that to be the case. He'll be back for Kansas State. And again, I'm not reporting it. I have no idea. That's just like me reading between the lines there. And when you look at the Texas Tech injury report, players out for them, Roy Alexander and Tristan Gentry, both at the receiver position. Texas Tech has a very deep receiving core. They've got a bunch of different guys that they can throw the ball. Gentry only came in with 3 snaps. Roy Alexander came in with 27. So not really guys that were planning to, impact that too much necessarily. And then Holton Hendricks also listed as out as an offensive lineman. Hadn't played a snap so far this season for them. They do have a couple offensive linemen on the questionable list. Hunter Zambrano. Is he related to Carlos? I'm not 100%, but 57 PFF grade, or I'm sorry, 72 PFF grade, just 57 snaps. So not really a regular, but certainly somebody who, I guess he'd be on the too deep. Howard Sampson, though, that is one that's interesting. 330 snaps for Sampson, and he was one of their big transfer portal pickups. Came in from North Carolina, where he had a big year there before he was at North Texas. 67.5 PFF grade. That'll be a big one, whichever way it goes. So that's definitely one to keep an eye on. And then probables on the defensive side of the ball with Amorian Banks and Ashton Hampton. So I'm just going to kind of assume that both of those guys are playing. As far as the guys who are questionable or out on the defensive side of the ball, Terrian Grant is a corner. He's out. He only came in with 25 snaps and had a 42 PFF grade. So I don't think that one's going to hurt too bad. Chapman Lewis has not played a snap so far this season. And then this is the biggest one of all. I'm just expecting him to play because this dude's a warrior and he's unbelievable. But the fact that Jacob Rodriguez is on the questionable report, he's an All-American. He's the Big 12 Defensive Player of the Year. He's one of the best, not just linebackers, not just defensive players. He's one of the best players in the country. The fact that he's questionable, does it slow down his performance at all, right? What if it does take a turn for the worse? What if he is out? That would be a huge loss for Texas Tech. So keep an eye on that one for sure with Jacob Rodriguez. Okay, let's get to our Texas Tech scouting report and then matchups of the game. This is Locked on Jayhawks. And today's episode of LOJ is brought to you by Supply House. When the opening whistle blows on a new repair, get your crew moving forward with Supply House. Order today and see parts on your doorstep tomorrow. Over 280,000 plumbing, HVAC, and electrical items from the most trusted brands in the business. Their real-time inventory and honest lead times keep you from punting projects, while their industry-leading customer service always has your blind side covered. Their Traymaster perks like priority shipping and dedicated support make the whole process smoother. Join the free Trademaster program today and score serious perks like priority shipping, lower prices, and a dedicated support line. Visit supplyhouse.com to sign up for free and use promo code SHCollege5 for 5% off your first order. That's supplyhouse.com. Real people, real service. And again, SHCollege5. Today's episode is also brought to you by FanDuel. The NFL season's here. College football season's here. We got MLB playoffs going on. NHL's getting started. NBA's getting started in like a week. October is perfect, man. And with FanDuel, they have an offer you don't want to miss, just like you don't want to miss Octobers in sports. Right now, new customers can bet just $5 and get $300 in bonus bets if you win. Pick a bet, put down $5, and if it hits, you'll unlock $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. We're going to have our FanDuel Friday coming up on Friday. Early read on that. Did you know you can get Jalon Daniels plus 200 to score an anytime touchdown? So it'll be a rushing or receiving touchdown. He only has one rushing touchdown so far this season, but you think against Texas Tech, it's a big game. You're playing on the road. You might be having to scramble for your life against their defensive line. Maybe a little more likely that he finds the end zone on a rushing score. So what are you waiting for? Visit FanDuel.com, download the FanDuel app today, and get started. Thanks for joining us on this episode of Locked on Jayhawks. You can check out Locked on College Football for your second listen every day. All right, Texas Tech scouting report. They're 5-0 on the season, 67-7 FCS win, then a 62-14 win over Kent State, which is kind of like an FCS win at this point. 45-14 win against Oregon State, which is also kind of like an FCS. No, not really. I have respect for Oregon State and Corvallis. Love the town. Oregon State's not been very good this year. So tough to tell too much from that. The Utah game was 13-10 at one point at Utah, and then they put up 21 unanswered in the fourth quarter to win 34-10. That was a statement win. Utah still is one of the best teams in the Big 12. At least we think. We still have a ways to go there, but that was really impressive what they did. And then they win 35-11 at Houston, which I was really impressed with that one because I think very highly of Willie Fritz, and that's a tough place to play on the road. So every game decided by 24 or more. They've been dominant so far. Their coach, Joey McGuire, he was, speaking of dominant, a dominant high school football coach in Texas, climbed the assistant ladder at Baylor. Now he's in year 4 as the head coach at Texas Tech, 28-16 record. They've been solid each and every year, but this is his best team. This is his breakout year after very high preseason expectations, although probably not as high national expectations as where they are right now, just from a standpoint of there's kind of question of, is this going to work? Locally, very high expectations because of all the money that went into, nailing the transfer portal. It was very funny seeing all of the SEC and Big Ten folks getting all up in arms about how dare Texas Tech spend all this money on their roster. And it's like, are you serious? Anyway, Texas Tech is number 5 on ESPN SP Plus right now. So I would say that it worked. I would say that their offseason spending spree was money well spent. And good on them for doing it. But number 4 offense, number 11 defense, and number 26 special teams. So they've been a wagon so far. They're 9th in the AP poll and 14th on ESPN FPI. Now, I will say, if you look at ESPN FPI, Kansas and Tech, it has them closer to a 6-point difference on a neutral field. Now, this is not a neutral field, so maybe you'd say it's closer to 8, 9, 10 points. But that would be closer than the 2 touchdowns of the spread being right now. That's just one site's opinion or metrics opinion. The player personnel for Texas Tech, they have 2 stud quarterbacks with Will Hammond and Baron Morton. Cameron Dickey and Jacoby Williams each have over 300 rushing yards. It's kind of running back by committee. Adam Hill has over 200. Hammond has a bunch of rushing yards too. They have 5 different receivers who have 220 or more receiving yards. And overall, Pro Football Focus gives them the country's number 5 receiving grade. As far as the offensive line, PFF gives them the number 10 in the nation in pass blocking, number 27 in the nation in run blocking, so they're good there. Defensively, the defensive line, that's probably where they put most of their money in the portal and worth every penny. David Bailey leads the way, 5.5 sacks, 31 pressures. They are number 3 as a team in pass rush grade on Pro Football Focus. And then Jacob Rodriguez, who we mentioned, it's part of the questionable report, one of the best linebackers in the country, 33 tackles, 2 interceptions. Overall, Texas Tech, led by Rodriguez and company, number 7 in the country in tackling grade. So they just kind of do everything well. They're also number 1 in the country in coverage grade, though I don't know how much of, they have some good players like that. Bryce Pollock is a really good player. He's got 3 interceptions. I can't help but think, though, being number 1 in coverage grade isn't related to how good their pass rush is. Maybe they're a top 30 coverage team in the country, but that's going to certainly boost it up, right? Now you look at the quarterback position for Texas Tech. Baron Morton, 69% on the year, 10.1 yards per attempt, 1,410 yards, 12 touchdowns, 3 interceptions. Not many rushing stats, though in his career he's shown the ability when he needs to. He had an injury in the first week this year. I don't know if that's slowing him down. Will Hammond, meanwhile, who came in the Utah game after Morton went down with an injury and started kind of a quarterback controversy. Not a typically a quarterback controversy is because like, oh, the starter's struggling. Should we put the backup in? No, it's just because Baron Morton's been doing well. Will Hammond was unbelievable. And he's right now completing 76% of his balls, 9 yards per attempt, 369 yards, 4 touchdowns, 1 pick, and 170 on the ground with 2 more scores. Whoever it is, though, they have the number 1 pass efficiency offense in the Big 12. They are 6th nationally in passing EPA per play and 17th nationally in success rate throwing the ball. So very successful. A lot of short passes, which I find interesting. They still get a lot of explosives, but their top thrown to area is 0 to 9 yards. When you look at that, 61 attempts for Morton between 0 to 9 yards. Then the second most is behind the line of scrimmage with 29 attempts, then 21 attempts between 10 to 19 yards, and then 20 attempts at 20 or more yards. So that means that if you count within 9 yards of the line of scrimmage, so basically 9 yards past the line of scrimmage all the way back to the throws behind the line of scrimmage, almost 70%, 69% of Baron Morton's passes are 9 yards or under. So a lot of short passes. You might be wondering, is that a high number? I have no idea. Jalon Daniels attempts 54% of his passes in such an area. So 15 percentage point upgrade for Baron Morton. That tells me, yes, they are throwing a lot of short and underneath passes, which means, not a ton of outside boundary shots. They'll take a couple here and there, and they do very good at hitting them when they do take them. But I kind of like Jalen Todd sticking at nickel this week, trying to work over the middle of the field. Big game that means for tackling underneath, making open field tackles, and defending those short routes. Safeties, corners, linebackers all getting in on the game there. Key stats for Texas Tech, 4 happy stats for them. Number 1, they are leading the Big 12 in points per game and points allowed per game, and the difference from them to second place in points per game is wider than the gap from second place to 10th place. So it's not even close with how many points they're averaging. 48 points per game, 11 points allowed per game. They are number 1 in the Big 12 in yards allowed per carry. They're giving up just 2.3 yards per carry, and they are in the 99th percentile in rush EPA per play defense. Very good run defense. They're number 2 in the Big 12 in pass efficiency defense, and that's thanks in part to leading the Big 12 with 8 interceptions. So they definitely can get some of those. Jalon Daniels is going to have to be on his game in this one. And then they're in the 89th percentile offensively in late down success rate. And that is one that is very scary to me because, as we know, the KU defense has really struggled on some of those key late downs, on those 3rd and 4th downs, and now you're playing an offense that has excelled in accomplishing those. 4 sad stats for Tech, 107th nationally in EPA per play running the football. So hasn't been a great running the football team, even though they do have, a good amount of overall yards as a team. They're in the 32nd percentile nationally in passing explosive play rate defensively, meaning that teams have been able to, even though, they have a lot of interceptions, I wonder if a little bit of that is boom and bust. They've given up a decent amount of big plays in the passing game. We've seen Kansas, they haven't really gotten a ton of big plays in the running game and gotten a few here or there, but, overall their ranking is a little lower. The passing game has been, solid there with Emmanuel Henderson. So maybe Henderson gets a couple big ones in this game. Levi Wentz gets a big one. Who knows? Texas Tech has also been forced to kick a field goal 11 times in the red zone this season. They've been there 28 times, which is a lot. But 11 field goals, that's just under half the times that they're there. Can Kansas be a bend but don't break at times? And then Texas Tech doesn't have the best punting unit. That's what we're stuck with. Texas Tech's a really good team, so we don't have a ton of sad stats to go on, but 10th in the Big 12 in yards per punt. Maybe KU can take advantage there. Let's finish up with our matchups of the game. Today's episode of the show is brought to you by Mazda. Mazda crafts cars for those who do more than simply move. From footwork to breathwork, athletes sweat all the details. Mazda brings the same intention to how we craft every model. You can feel Japanese craftsmanship in every detail, from the metallic accents to available Napa leather upholstery. With all-wheel drive standard in every crossover SUV, you can drive with confidence through almost any season. Like our players, we sweat every detail because when you make every move count, impossible becomes irrelevant. Mazda, move and be moved. Today's episode of the show is also brought to you by Quo. One of the tools that helps make a huge difference for business owners is Quo, formerly OpenPhone. It's the same great business phone system you've heard us talk about here before, just with a new name. And here's why it matters. Every missed call is money left on the table. When every customer conversation counts, you need a phone system that keeps you connected 24/7. Quo is the #1 business phone system that streamlines customer communications. It works right through an app on your phone or your computer, so no more carrying two phones, no more relying on a landline. Their built-in AI agent, too, is a game changer. It can answer after-hour calls, capture leads, and keep businesses moving even when you're off the clock. See why over 90,000 businesses trust Quo, formerly OpenPhone. Get started free and get 20% off your first 6 months at quo.com/lockedoncollege. That is quo.com/lockedoncollege. And if you've got existing numbers with another service, Quo will port them over at no extra charge. Quo, no missed calls, no missed customers. Thanks for joining us on today's episode of Locked On Jayhawks. Again, check out Locked On College Football. You can give us a follow at LO_Jayhawks or at D Johnson Radio. What are the matchups of the game? What are going to be the key pieces for KU against Texas Tech? First down, can Kansas block Texas Tech? Very point blank. The great pass defense, pass efficiency defense, the interceptions that Tech has, the yards per carry against numbers that we've kind of talked about. It all starts with the defensive line and the pass rush. And I think all of them have some level of relation to the pass rush, right? If you're getting more sacks, it's going to lower the opponent's yard per carry number because that counts against rushing yards in college football. If you're getting pressure, it's going to force more ill-advised throws and possibly more interceptions. If, it's going to make your pass defense overall a lot better. It makes life a lot easier when you can rush the passer. Here's the Pro Football Focus grades of the Texas Tech starting front four. David Bailey, 90.4. Romello Height, 91.4. Those are their two defensive ends. Then up the middle, Skylar Gill-Howard, 84.3. And Lee Hunter, 85.6. Missouri had a really good defensive line that Kansas played. I think this one's even better. I think this is going to be the best defensive line you played. Missouri will probably be second. Maybe Utah will be third or something like that. It is very good. So can you block them, right? And that doesn't mean you have to be perfect. Doesn't mean you need a game where you have 0 sacks, you give up, only 1 tackle for loss. Some of those things are going to happen in this game. They just are. How do you respond to it? And can you just avoid it from becoming the thing of the game? Like, don't walk away from this game going, yeah, Texas Tech won the game because they had 7 sacks and 12 TFLs. It's like, oh, they had 1 sack, maybe a few more pressures than you would like. They had 5 TFLs, and it's like, yeah, they didn't take over the game, but they had a few plays that they won on. But if they can block Tech, Kansas ranks 12th nationally in yards per attempt passing, quarterback rating, and touchdown to interception ratio. And Tech has given up a fair amount of passing explosive plays that we talked about earlier. If you can block them, you can hit some of those passing explosive plays and maybe have more. They haven't given up more than 14 points. I think you would hope that Kansas can score more than that, but it starts with being able to block them. Second down is avoiding the killer turnover. Texas Tech leads the Big 12 with those 8 interceptions. They're also tied 5th in fumbles forced with 5 of them. This is a defense that not only are they very good, they're forcing a lot of turnovers. You're a 2-touchdown underdog. How often does a 2-touchdown underdog win on the road against a really good team without winning the turnover battle, with having killer turnovers themselves? You need to be the team that's forcing the killer turnovers, not the other way around. So I think Kansas needs to be clean on the offensive side of the ball, which is much easier said than done. And I think they have to win the turnover margin here, which obviously is very much coach speak because you say that going into each and every game. But when you are a 2-touchdown underdog, that gets amplified even more. Like, you need some fun, crazy, weird things to happen go in your favor. Third down, going back to the well on third down. We're doing third downs. We've talked a lot about this so far this year. The Kansas so far this season has not been up to snuff on third downs. That right now Kansas comes into this game 14th in the Big 12 on third down conversions. And you look at Texas Tech's defense, you guessed it, they're the #1 defense in the Big 12 in third down conversion rate against. But you look at last season, Kansas was first in the Big 12. You look at the 2 previous seasons, Kansas was hovering around 59 or 49, 50, 51% on third downs. They've consistently over the last 3 seasons prior to this year been one of the best third down teams in the country. Now, it's a different play caller now, but Jalon Daniels is still your quarterback. Did all of that go away? Even if you said you were going to be worse on third downs, I guess you could say that, maybe as much as this year's receiving core has much more explosiveness and guys like Emmanuel Henderson, maybe just the trust and the the good route running and contested catch making of those receivers that you had with Arnold, Grimm, and Skinner, that was enough to be a better third down team. But you wouldn't think it would be a gap this big. You wouldn't think it'd be going from 51% to like 31%. I still think there's some reversion in there for Kansas to happen. And I still don't know if it's going to happen in like a 2-game stretch where KU just converts like every third down for like 2 games. Or maybe they just have one game where they go like 10 of 11 or something like that. And this probably isn't the one that you would point to because Tech is the number 1 third down defense. But if ever it were to happen, this would be a great one for it to happen for KU. Because on the paper, it is a big edge for Texas Tech. You also look at the other side. Texas Tech is number 3 in the Big 12 in third down conversion rate as an offense. KU defense is number 10 of the 16 teams in the league. So third down on paper is a big advantage for Texas Tech. If you want to go on the road and quiet the crowd, it's converting those key third downs that make it feel like gut punches to the crowd that they can't get off the field. And we saw it work the opposite way when KU played at Missouri. I also think Kansas, if you just want to say like late downs here, you have to be more aggressive. You're a 2-touchdown underdog. You have to be willing to go for some fourth downs that maybe you wouldn't normally do in a game like this. And then fourth down here is KU's defense buckling down in the red zone. If there's a potential bugaboo for Texas Tech, they don't have many, but it might be red zone offense. So they've scored on 90% of the red zone trips, which is solid, but that's 7th in the Big 12. That's more middle of the pack for a team who wants to be number 1 in everything right now in the Big 12. But it's not just the amount of times they're scoring or not scoring. It's the fact that they've had 11 field goals in their 28 trips. So if Kansas can have a game where they keep them around that percentage, right? Let's say they have 6 red zone trips. Could you find a way to force them to 3 field goals there? Because 6 red zone trips would be a lot, but 30 points against the Texas Tech offense that's really explosive when your defense at times has struggled. I don't know. Like I would take 30. If you guaranteed Tech would only score 30 points, I would take that to the bank and run with it. I know they have a really good defense and it's going to be tough to score 30 points yourself, but like I would gladly take that to the bank, right? Kansas has not been very good defensively in the red zone. So far this season, they have the 2nd worst score percentage allowed in the Big 12 at 94% in the red zone. The only team who has a worse score percentage in the red zone is Utah at 100%. But guess what? Utah has only given up 6 red zone trips. Kansas has given up 17. So point being, and you got a big one against UCF, and we saw the difference there. Kansas got the red zone stop against UCF on the goal line stand. That was their first of the season. You might need another one in this game against Texas Tech if you want to win it. And that is something where you hope to improve at as the season goes on. And maybe that was the start of it improving against UCF, but you're going to really need it against Texas Tech because that's one of your big hopes in this one is trying to hold them and limit them and bend but not break in the red zone. Maybe you force a turnover in the red zone. Like those would be ways that Kansas could try to pull this upset. We'll get to the keys to the game on tomorrow's episode, though. Players to watch, all that on tomorrow's episode as well. Thank you for joining us on today's episode of Locked On Jayhawks. You can find our show anywhere you get your podcast, including on our YouTube page where you can like and subscribe to the show. See you next time with LOJ.